Advantage 1 is discretion. Sections for present criminal justice and results of heavy-handed prosecutors in terms with a wide range of discretion. This makes reforming grassroots organizing impossible without addressing prosecutorial power. Paragraph 26. Section of restricted mass incarceration, re-implementing punishments likely to maximize prison time, such as extraordinary authorities, powers and will leave the magistrate to 9 out of 10 cases are resolved by delivering the prosecutor alone determines who to charge, what charges to bring, what pleas to offer these decisions are for public view and subject to no oversight. The ACLU focused the power of district attorneys reform will be focused on reducing prosecutorial power and plea bargaining, incentivize defendants to waive their rights through coercion. 13 prosecutors require defendants to waive their rights in exchange for a lenient plea. The prosecutor's objective is to conserve resources by assuring that no more proceedings ensure the waiver reflects an abuse of prosecutorial power. Prosecutors require defendants to waive rights to DNA testing to establish their innocent consent to deportation. Waiver of rights may be extracted in exchange for mere opportunity to be considered for lenient treatment. Prosecutors exploit the opportunity by requiring defendants to wish to consider for favorable plea to offer and agree. Prosecutors have transformed the investigation in a manner that is cheap, quick, and more effective. Criminal defendants are sacrificing prosecutorial protections. Prosecutors have prosecutors use leverage to achieve results and deconstructing the efficiency mindset that guides plea bargaining is capable of supporting the fundamental unfairness of the entire CJS wheel. 12. As long as plea bargaining is used in prison, industrial complex will continue to grow. Plea bargains were eliminated. There would be a whopping reduction in prosecution. Such a shift would be an importance of ending our culture of mass confinement. The system of mass incarceration is entirely dependent on the cooperation of those who seek control of everyone. Charges crime, exercise their rights. There would be not enough judges, lawyers, or cells. The entire system is riddled with corruption, and this results in cycles of criminalization, results in dehumanization, and structural violence. Brown and Patterson 16. 1 in 3 African-American men will experience prison children, inmates who less well school and participate, partner with inmates suffering from depression, economic hardship, being like a locked with scars, inmates fear likelihood of smoking free, mature death, felony conviction means never get a good job and independently rights violations result in rampant totalitarianism and inability to critique power. Ivanson 17 plea bargains overuse raised concerns about the USCJS. A defendant faced with significant jail time may be pressured to accept a plea agreement without having opportunity to review evidence. More plea agreements remember a one-sided contract. Prosecutors punish those plea agreements by stacking additional charges. Prosecutors can target individuals in courts plea bargain by promising to drop charges against family members. Modern day plea bargaining is not accountable. Interior choice of healthcare society relying on inquisitorial legal system. The government has absolute discretion and or to selectively punish everyone. No citizen of the modern American society can possibly know all of the legal obligations under the current system of plea bargaining. The adversarial legal system is being severely undermined, and if these abolishment is feasible, no circumvention shall for 84. Philadelphia supports the feasibility of total abolition. Philadelphia prosecutors complied with prevention of bargaining in nearly all cases. Philadelphia defense counsel made a bench trial legitimately contested proceeding. Philadelphia indicts sexual abolition of plea bargains are achievable. Advantage 2 is legitimacy. Increased military intervention with sparks war with Russia, spills over to other conflicts and makes nuclear war likely. Only stabilizing foreign policy can solve that. Look for 13. Retaliation would be even worse. We're beginning a civil war that will not change the result. Will guarantee more casualties. Military attacks brings triggering more general war. Trying to make it difficult for people to stand aside. The more U.S. attacks, more collateral damage involving Russian military personnel. Russian mercenaries were killed by American forces. Russia threatens very great consequences in response to Syria. Moscow may have a lower threshold for using nuclear weapons. Russia can take actions that are more limited but dangerous. Moscow could provide arms to Tehran, and Iranian authorities may decide that they have little reason to avoid confrontation with Washington. Any American attack on Syria, the greater chance of sparking a war, and collapse of the rule of law is coming, and the multiplier for every impact now is critical to affirm our institutions. Fugue 17, the greatest to national security is Trump's assault on the rule of law, giving domestic terrorists the go-ahead to spark violence. Trump is lighting fuse. The success of American democracy comes from the rule of law. The rule of law is fragile and dependent on the faith of one people whose faith in it. Anarchy opens. Trump has effectively prevented the federal court from upholding our nation's most fundamental laws. He's pulling directly from the dictator's playbook. It is time for all Americans to be better than Trump citizens standing up in peaceful protest, and others in power, the Department of Justice, leaders in Congress and the state stand up to Trump's assault and plea bargaining undermines the legitimacy of the court system. Gilchrist. There is also empirical support for that the legitimacy is important for it to function. People care about procedural fairness, but people want to have a voice in the decision-making process. People are sensitive to whether they are treated with dignity. There are 3 ways plea bargaining undermines legitimacy. Plea bargaining is less reliable in trial. 1, all of those are convicted are formally in the same boat. A temporarily treating importantly dissimilar cases alike undermines neutrality. And 2, plea bargaining creates incentives for dishonesty. She's compelled to lie to get it and fails to treat the defendant with dignity, and reflects poor on the character of the legal authorities. And consistency with prosecution is the linchpin of Trump's assault on the rule of law. Graham 4-9, Trump's beef with Sessions. Trump's voiced his job to protect the president. Trump falls into the grass. It is not the president's role to decide who has committed crime. There is a regimented process for charging people. Trump has long goals for understanding and accepting the idea of the rule of law. Trump's engagement in a campaign against the rule of law and securing the rule of law and legitimacy solves Trump's war powers. It gives senior officials confidence to disobey and creates legal obstacles to execute War Powers Campbell 16, Trump has declared that he will reinstitute torture and killing for terrorist. Also, logistics includes will obey military code of justice or code of military justice. Last bit opens up the code makes it unlawful to obey an illegal order. These nuclear weapons as a part of retaliation response under the Uniform Code of Military Justice can be a major impediment. There are also times break when it is incumbent on the officials break the law to the determination of what orders are enforced and what do not reside with the Oval Office, and collapse of the rule of law guarantees extinction. Kasparov 17, America led by example, exposed dictatorships. America has retreated and the world has become much worse off. Terrorism, war, and intervention results that America lives in a vacuum. Existential threat is very real. Terrorism, external parties, North Korea, nuclear, blackmail, aggressive Russia. They're thriving. The U.S. has retreated. America and leadership beacons at home. Democracy is the only remedy for every crisis that plagues war today. While war, famine, poverty, terrorism, all guaranteed by authoritarian regimes, American leadership is required. There's no edge. Thus, the plain text of the Supreme Court of the United States ought to abolish plea bargaining in the United States criminal justice system. Palmer 99. Plea bargaining must be abolished so long as the negotiation of pleas is permitted. It will continue to drive a great number of persons of their right to trial, high corruption of public officials, and serve as an escape path for affluent and violators of the law. Nexus framework focus on intent-based frameworks, structure, our ability to respond to violence with Kletsky 12 unintended consequences, help reinforce racial harm, powers being able to act without having to take harm of others into account. Power strongest when it operates through structures that make disregarding harm appear acceptable. Unintended consequences affirm it, resulting harm, unequal effects of policy are perceivably obvious. Justice requires attention to both harmful effect, intended effects, unintended consequences, to most of this moralistic message. It picks justified managed and expensive through Supreme Court precedent. You can just skip the last one.
Okay. Okay, I sent a doc out for process. Alright, let me know when it is good. Alright, is everyone good?
Yeah, it's over.
Alright.
Do we need all of that too?
Yeah.
Oh,
It would be good. Alright, you could all share.
no, we can't. I need to be sincere to see this.
No, I'm blind, so I think it's close.
My internet.
Okay, I'm ready.
Alright. Is everyone good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is a document of the 5 senior-most officials in the military. Your Karabelk evidence you seem to tag it as it indicates that senior officials will somehow check Trump. Can you tell me which one of these white people that all heavily support Trump will check him?
So sure. First of all, I don't think it's a question of just senior military officials.
Your tag says senior military officials, so let's focus on that. Which one of these senior military officials will check Trump in a world where, 1, they all look like this, and 2, they've all come out in support of him?
I don't think that you've had that they come out in support of him.
Well, they haven't come out in denial of him. Let me rephrase. But that's
Okay, do you
irrelevant
have
to my
that for
question.
all of them? I
That's
feel like
irrelevant
that's
to
an
my
accusation
question.
that's
Which
also
one of them will
substantiated.
check Trump? This is about your evidence, not my photos.
Okay, so
Which one of them
again,
will check
Carvel
Trump?
makes a statement that people within the military, they take an oath, and according to that uniform code, they have to follow procedures. These people follow procedures within the military.
Most of these generals have been in support of the strikes on Syria. Can you give me a name of one of them who would not support Trump or check Trump?
So again, my evidence speaks more broadly. It says...
You're explaining your evidence, but I'm asking for a name. Can you give me a name of one of these 6 or 5
So
people
again,
who
you
would
have not
check
read evidence that indicates that these people are in support of Trump or that they won't. I think the burden is on you to prove that, given that
I
we've read
mean, you
evidence
tagged
that
your
says
card
they
as
will.
senior officials, but that's fine. I guess none of them will check Trump since you can't give me a name. Let's talk about the rest of the AF. This whale card about deconstructing the efficiency mindset. This card is in the context of Michelle Alexander's advocacy that says that there should be a mass plea refusal and some kind of grassroots movements. How do you access the same internal links and spillover in a world where you don't advocate for mass plea refusal?
Well, sure. So the endpoint of Michelle Alexander's article is reform within the CJS. We would argue that the one
With that reform within the CJS, her argument is that that comes from mass plea refusal because it causes some kind of like revolutionary energy.
So
How do you access that in a world where you are not mass plea refusal?
Okay, so again, the internal link to that sort of reform that she talks about is that there's not enough cells, judges, or juries to have the influx of litigation.
Exactly.
Our
because there's
argument,
a
wait,
mass
Shruti,
group
can I
of
finish
people
your question?
refusing it.
Our argument is
And
that
they're all taking orientations against the state.
So our
How
argument-
do you advocate for that same kind of protest in a world where you are
So
not
no,
mass
so Michelle Alexander talks about how the overflow in litigation and efficiency of the criminal justice system means they would have to reform it.
But it also
Our
talks
argument is
about
that
how a lot
banning
of these
plea bargaining
reformisms
creates
would
that
come from their
same
disagreement.
efficiency deconstruction.
How in a world where people are not actively protesting the government because they're not actively refusing to plead?
How
That is
does it
her
create
point.
that?
How does it create that same deconstruction?
Sure.
of the
So,
mindset?
so the way that the prison industrial complex works is, in the jury systems, is that if there's too much litigation, too much prosecution for them to handle, they have to reform and change it, which is our solvency argument
Okay,
that all of
that's
our
fine.
arguments talk about.
Let's talk about this Fuchs evidence. You say now we have to reaffirm our institutions. What does that look like?
Sure. So not letting Trump do things like deport immigrants.
Who lets
despite,
not Trump do it? Or who makes Trump not do those
the
things?
Supreme Court and its
How does the
proceedings.
Supreme Court check Trump in a little bit?
If there's faith in the rule of law, then publics will support it and are able to check Trump.
All right, thanks. I'll take that. Start. Let me get some water. Do you don't want some?
Oh, if you got me by right, greatly appreciated.
Gotcha. 3? Yeah, 4. Oh, yeah, 3. Sorry.
No,
Thank
she's
you.
right for it.
4. Oh. 5. 5.
Okay, 3:30 left. I'll move on.
Nope.
Okay, it's
Okay, I see that.
He just came with a new statement too.
Yeah.
there's one card on paper, so I'll pass it to you after you do it. Spencer.
Yeah. Wait 1 second. I'm still looking.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Pooh.
You got one?
It always do.
That's all mine.
Okay. The order is one off case.
Is there an order, please?
No, good. What's on?
It'll be the framer first and then top down.
Framing and then.
Top down. Is it okay for doors to open? Should it be closed? People not here. Alright. The off is Afro-pessimism. The only ethical demand available to modern politics is that of the slave, the demand for the end of America itself. This cry born in the belly of slave ships and the turning vertigo of constitutive genocide supposes the grammar of the 1ACs calls for larger institutional access as a fundamental fortification of the white settler and slave master civil society by its diversionary focus on the ethicality of policies of the U.S. as opposed to the a priori question of civil society's very existence. The black body society of social death par excellence, having become dead by 700-year injection in the middle passage, barring its subjectivity. Wilderson 2. Civil society is not trained for black subject coded to wait and ways or white. The black subject slave kickstarts capital. The black subject itself dictates ridiculous demand currents and human hence for strategy because Ramsey, white activists, prison abolition movement has no theory of the unwage, no solidarity with the slave. Nobody functions as a province of complete disorders. Black body blackness is a site of absolute direct election level of fear from magnetizing bullets. Black body functions as a map of gratuitous violence level symbolic. Blackness generates no history passed by the heritage level of natural purposes. Rapes is black harvests, prisons is black harvests, AIDS is black linkers, photogenic objects program of complete disorder. Black migration functions as negative dialogue to blacks refusal. Interference to firm program complete disorder. One is race disorder. One's politics are underwritten by a desire to take this country down. Political movements today's marked by new repentance. Stasis to try to work with abolition will fail. First all from the work of position of coherence on behalf of position of incoherence. When the black subject backings with the incoherence of civil war which claims blackness is politically native in sight. And Focusing on the Trump administration as a cause of human suffering mobilizes this election as a violent change in the world because immigrants and non-black people are now subject to the American nightmare that has always underwritten black existence. Malachi 18. After-pessimism teaches us that racially black persons occupy a structural position analogous to slave, acquired death, and mean carcass, consumable for his willing to return to the sea, does not qualify as historical and distance to the end of times or new time beginning. Rather, evidence is the long period of exertion that this new world order and sector insofar as Trump and his henchmen use liberalism to deal with fascist countries to trap the rights of non-black minority population to mobilize on an American nightmare of one instance of an ongoing disaster, literal interests untouched by law and undermined the law, shape the emergence of social in the U.S. when the non-black minorities in terms of America are being to experience irregularly and provisionally the America black people have always lived in. And modern policing and carcerality stems from a system of anti-blackness and chattel survey. The 1AC's discussion of the prison confines anti-blackness to specific locations and attempt to make it coherent. This is akin to white liberals against bombing brown people abroad that don't care about black death when they experience similar things. Section 6. The U.S. considered black people to be a weapon of mass destruction, make sure the Republican Party prior to the Patriot Act, prior to the war on drugs, even the consolidation of police apparatus and the genealogy of nefarious police is properly charted to the political and rituals, racial profiling, and seen on non policing, those show control of crisis management of black population, those figured centrally matters of racial equality policing, color lines only require the presence of social problem, political in the absence of human presence, translating the racially cannot be explained away by gunboat diplomacy, expansion of strategic overseas military and reduced increase of life enslavement is enabled by symbolic and material mobilization that divides of sovereignty the site of black body, rendering of black as object disposition, politics, and the opportunity of humiliation structures, inevitably modern perceptions of sovereignty, like opposition to war and terror, has borrowed from rhetorical repertoire of black struggle that has displayed a striking disinterest in the legal amenities or lived experience of black communities. And democracy cannot contain or understand black beliefs. Liberal incorporation is used to shut down black demands for liberation. This turns all the rule of law good arguments. Thompson 17. The disavowal of black race and task acceptance widening revealed the implicit character of American democracy. Liberal democracy's failure to understand black race's legitimate response reveals the limits of liberal imagination, emotional displays of speeches of access to political loss of control over oneself. Emotional expressions are believed to be problematic for democratic policies because of their destabilizing forces. Appeal to procedural justice and democracies provide an institutional barrier between the perpetrators and victims of justice, breaking to depoliticize situations that could preclude further violence. Reconciliation community acknowledge violent past design, dramatic emotions to severe into more positive and less divisive forces. White democracy demands that oppressed groups suppress their anger in the name of greater good of democratic politics. And the psychopathic behavior of whites that have targeted blacks for genocide make all impacts become inevitable. Realize them back the body of the heating bloody sides. The bull sees the matadors in the moment of truth. In the analogous situation, blacks have charged the banners held by the European matadors. Democracy, capitalism, Marxism, religion, education, now representing the only one concept, genocide, nuclear warfare, population control. It is time for blacks to look at the matador, unable to experience guilt, selfish, callous, and having a total disregard for the white rights of others. The overwhelming scientific evidence shows whites' appearance as psychopaths. Right, 84. In a wolf fight after being brutalized while making new real charges of the movement of Keith, there comes a time when the bull finally turns faces to reveal the only movement seen as heaving bloody sides. The movement of the truth of the experience of black people all over represents analogous situations from hundreds of years. Blacks have been charging the banners held by white matadors. The balance remained constant as long as blacks were acting as blacks are now a threat and liability to whiteness. Therefore, the banner held by the matador represents only one concept, genocide. Indeed, this black woman's truth. Time for blacks to look at the matador. In relationship with the black race, Europeans, whites, are psychopaths in their behavior reflects the proclivity which received in the history. The psychopath is an individual who is constantly conflicting with other persons and groups. This unable experience goes complete selfish and callous and total disregard for the rights of others. This links specifically to the evidence that I showed you in Cossacks. They rely on white people who are defined as psychopaths because they don't care about black life, and they've all reaffirmed Trump to somehow check Trump and check rule of law. Trump would have fired them if they did not support it, and all of them actively support their politics, and there's no way they want to see will be able to resolve their underlying racism. Thus, the alternative is an unflinching paradigmatic analysis that poses the question of whether civil society is ethical or not. We create a disruptive political cognizance endorsed by every negative outlet that spreads word to break down civil society. Wilderson 10. An unflinching paradigmatic analysis movement to dedicate the complete overthrow of existing order, the legal consequences for you, threatened ability or unwillingness to hold modest feet to fire political agenda predicated on paradigmatic analysis. We have the power to pose a question, and the power to pose a question is the greatest power of all. Thus, the role of the ballot is to vote for the that best methodologically resists anti-blackness. I'll also isolate a couple specific links to 1AC evidence here. First, the Pendergrass card that they read at the top of the 1AC blames Sessions for things like the political problem. Sessions' heavy-handed prosecution. This is a link because it focuses on the way in which they're blaming Sessions for new forms of violence that have always existed. Also, the Fuchs 17 card that says that we have to reaffirm our institutions. The 1AC even acknowledges that there are problems with our institution when they identify that things like mass incarceration happen, but it says, regardless, we still have to reaffirm them, reaffirm things like rule of law. This is a form of cruel optimism where we always put faith in systems that do not work, which means it turns the entirety of the 1AC conspiracy that they would make things worse, and they also call for a reaffirmation of something that is racist, which is reason to reject them. Also, the Graham evidence says that blames Trump for things like prosecutorial accountability and Trump's strategy, which is another link to the Thompson evidence that I read in the 1AC. Also, the Carabel 16 evidence. The senior officials are the biggest link to this app because he relies on white people to somehow check other white people. They all support each other. Kasparov evidence also says that we should focus on things like preventing extinction, but the argument is that these bodies, if they are parasitic on the black body, do not deserve these kinds of lives of extinction. We should analyze their ethicality in the first place. Now, case, the framing. First, this McCluskey card does not include any of the K impacts and the role of the ballot as a prerequisite. This is just an analysis of how we should not purely focus on things like intent-based framework, which is not the K. The K is also consequential, which takes us out, but also it's a question of our methodology. They affirm things like the rule of law, which are institutions that they know and acknowledge are racist in the 1AC, but attempt to reform, which is why we have to question the ethicality of the 1AC to begin with. Now the AC top down. Trump literally ordered a strike on Syria 2 nights ago without congressional approval. If this wasn't enough to trigger their impacts, then nothing is. Strakalarski 414. Trump administration officials on Saturday rallied to Donald Trump's declaration to mission accomplished. Briefly executed to strike last. We met our objectives. We had the sides. The hard chemicals programs mission accomplished. The president's expansion this morning were a strong affirmation of the mission he gave our military was completely accomplished. Hilly Boston for protecting Syrians and Moscow's molten Syrian president. Assad's government to continue its attack pressure. Condemns the strong political terms of the Russian military assisting the belligerent country and their counterterrorism efforts. Strikes successfully hit every target. The Allies took every measure and caution. Don't only hit the intended targets. None of their AC impacts make sense in the world of Trump, where even their own unique incentives from the AC identifies that he's going to break down rule of law regardless. Things like discretion and legitimacy will always fail. Also, plea bargaining is inevitable after strives, negotiations underground spurs abuse and turns the case. Letter 87. The expense to periods preventable with the learning teachers said the acceptance of negotiation pleas because of case processing efficiency result of an impossible tendency to cooperate among members of worker and power. The observed bargaining occurring at all levels of judges favorably so plea bargaining is a permanent component of the American criminal possibility. Remains uninformed of activities. Judges also takes up the efficiency mindset of because judges have a vested interest in recreating plea bargaining to remain efficient. Also, banning plea bargaining creates longer sentences and all causes style attitudes. Turn the case. Carnes and Cruz 91. Alaska ban resulted in longer sentences to increase prohibiting plea bargaining not solve the impetus and legislative public opinion from the December 17. The specific policy changes ban where the trends to deal with crime more severely. Also, specifically on their efficiency mindset. So this is all in the context of Michelle Alexander's idea that we should refuse the plea. They do not access the same kind of protest and spillover arguments that they can use to leverage against the K in a world where they are not mass plea refused because they're not galvanizing massive public opinion. Also, there are no public defense reports. It's guarantees worse trial. Our report no date. Well, then plea bargaining providing everyone with a public defender is simply infeasible. Public defense is too every single call all the cases of plea bargaining. Market plea bargaining. That's the last sentence I didn't read.
The rap report card?
Yeah.
Eliminating plea bargaining or?
Public defense system is too overextended to cover all plea bargaining.
Okay.
I didn't read providing more public defenders requires.
Everyone good?
Mm-hmm.
The senior military officials that you referenced in your last CX have repeatedly tweeted against Trump and his strikes in Syria.
Tweeted. What has that done to check Trump?
So again, they said...
Tweeting and checking are two very different things.
So, okay, they have also said that they're against the strikes in Syria. How is your advantage to explain
you
that?
can say things and tweet things all you want, but actions speak louder than words. What have they done to check Trump?
Okay, well, that begs the question of our advantage, which is that they don't have the legitimacy in the status quo because of plea bargaining.
If they don't have the legitimacy in the status quo, because,
I have another question.
also your evidence doesn't isolate that that's because of plea bargaining. It
Yeah,
isolates
we
because
actually
Trump is
do.
overriding the judicial system.
Yes.
That card does not
No.
say the word plea bargaining.
It does, but let's go on to the K. So my first question on the criticism is how does anti-black violence describe things like Trump striking non-black people within the Middle East?
So I think this can be explained through a form of, one, I don't think that question is relevant to the AC because it is a domestic policy, but second of all, we distance ourselves from anti-blackness. You can think of it as a kind of scale in which brown people, the closer they are to blackness, the more they are seen as otherized and different. This is exemplified through things like colorism in South Asian communities where the closer you are to blackness, the less desirable you are viewed.
Okay, so how is it a binary?
Because
So
we view them as
minor,
otherized.
wait, so I have a
Because they
question.
are closer to blackness.
Wait, because they are closer to black. So it's not an antagonism, it's a binary between the two?
I did not say that. I said
Okay,
that
so my
anti-blackness
question is,
structural
if there's a
antagonism.
fundamental antagonism between anti-blackness and whiteness, then why does what's in the middle influence that?
What do you mean, what's in the
So,
middle? My argument
for
is that your
example-
proximity to blackness, which is not what's in the middle, influences that. So the darker you are in South Asian communities, the less desirable you are viewed because of things like colorism. That's why we have creams like Fair and Lovely that literally bleach your skin to make you white, because
what
they don't want
does
to be otherized.
the alternative do to check Trump's military power?
So first of all, the argument is that that's asking the wrong question. We have to ask the question of whether or not civil society is ethical to begin with. We say that we cannot check Trump within the domain of civil society because civil society
Okay,
put
so
Trump
what
there in the
does-
first place.
what does the
We
alternative-
elected Trump.
Okay,
White supremacy
so what
made
does-
that possible.
What does the alternative do then to disavow or get rid of civil society?
So the alternative analyzes the ways in which anti-blackness has continued over time, i.e. instead of seeing things as contingent, different like pieces on a chessboard that we can move around and somehow change, the goal of the alternative is to see the board writ large,
Okay,
see the
so
game
what
that
is
they're making us play,
recognizing-
so
what
that
is-
we can make strategies to break it
Okay,
down.
so what does recognizing that this antagonism exists and blackness is pathologized do to change the fact that Trump is president?
Again, I think you are asking the wrong question. White supremacy and this antagonism made Trump the president in the first place. Instead of focusing on singular aspects of white supremacy like Trump, we should focus on the structure writ large. You're focusing on the pieces, we focus on the board. We need to see the game that we are playing. The alternative
Sure.
paints a larger picture and allows us to resist
So
it better.
I
because we
understand.
understand
So
everything in a larger
we assume that we're
context.
structured in a society of white supremacy.
What's your question?
My question is, what does the alternative then do from that structure for people who are incarcerated? Even if there is a
So,
larger structure,
there's a couple
what do you do
arguments
for the
in it.
particularities
Are you
of it?
taking credit for this or do you want me to just keep talking?
Oh,
Want me to answer?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a couple arguments about carcerality, and in the context of how the 1AC discusses carcerality, this Sexton evidence talks about how the focus on the prison as some kind of place where violence is recreated attempts to cohere that violence, i.e. when you say the prison industrial complex is bad because it creates racism, because it creates things like dehumanization, that is all attempts to explain where violence came from. The argument that the criticism makes is that we cannot explain these forms of violence. It is incoherent. There's no kind of beginning or end to it, which is why we have to focus on things that have been policing blackness since the beginning, things like slave patrols. So the alternative acknowledges the larger picture, once again. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have to stop from. I have a minute.
Can I have my card back, or do you still need it?
Yeah. Is good.
I haven't gotten it yet. Could you make sure you sent it? Because I still haven't gotten it.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure. The last thing is the one in C doc.
It says it's sent in my. Maybe just refresh.
I'll reload it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I got it. Yeah, I'm done with
Okay. Are you good?
it. Let's do it.
Advantage 1, or actually advantage 2, advantage 1.
Whoa. I mean, I just have the case stuff.
Alright, so case advantage,
Okay.
the case specific links on case, and then the K proper.
There's no lesson.
Alright,
So it's case K.
yep.
Trump war crimes and Syrian strikes put U.S.-Russia tension on the brink. Any more aggression causes full-scale war, nuclear escalation, securing judicial legitimacy, and key to preventing Trump adventures in Syria by using court doctrine to encourage military officials to disobey Trump plea bargaining, crushes legitimacy, deals happen behind closed doors so people are unaware of what's going on, discrediting the sentencing, makes it seem arbitrary, and incentivizes defense lie. Our ability to check Trump relies on believing the rule of law. Trump has unchecked in the past, and his supporters bind to this disrespect, restoring faith in democracy, key to checking Trump violent militarism, which causes a sanction and escalation with NDCA extended advantage 1 to the plea bargaining prompts up mass incarceration. Since lawyers are able to get through exponentially more cases and never have to go to trial, which sustains the prison industrial complex. Their first turn argument of our uniqueness it takes us into account and postdates it. It says that any other strike after this would be sufficient to trigger the impact, and each more strike after that makes it more likely. You say plea bargaining is inevitable, cross my shoulder when I see evidence that Philly proves no circumvention and it's feasible. Also doesn't take into account a universal ban on plea bargaining, which is what the 1AC is not what their evidence is talking about, and not what they're talking about. They say plan of plea bargaining creates longer sentences, yes, but it decreases the number of people that go to prison. They would have to screen more carefully, so only the people who are guilty would go to jail. They say no public defense resources. Yes, or would, because there would be less trials going to jail because prosecutors care about winning and losing cases because that's what their job is relying on. That is what their job is relying on. Now their case specific, this case specific legal evidence. First off, Pendergrass. This justifies a permutation. We can acknowledge a permutation to both. We can acknowledge sort of white structures of white supremacy, but also combat these particular instances of white violence. You say identity and faith in institutions is cruel. Optimism known as not enlightened principles, and things like rule of law aren't inherently bad. For example, the Haitian slaves revolted based on enlightenment principles and still use them for good. Just because America has corrupted them doesn't mean that they're inherently or intrinsically bad. You say that we rely on white people. Read the bios of the people that she has cited, and all of them have spoken up against Trump, and the reason that they haven't done anything is because the rule of law is illegitimate, which is our uniqueness argument. Now the aftermath case, we should get to where the case makes 6 minutes of AC office justification store and the rest of the context of the plan and our impacts despite the rest of the case makes the being possible decision making. The plan only focuses on ideological truth within its proper focus. Otherwise, we can be back aimless for that sides of typical questions of theory and practice and permutation to both. The alternative can overcome the links to status quo, can overcome the links to the plan also justifies permutation to both acknowledge the totality of whiteness, but also come back particularities and identities in singular. Neither there's a world or impact ratings, immature politics for. In 15, many people have closed out conceptions of human beings become a serious problem when we do political work. The world is differently anti-logical. People don't seem to understand a reasonable phenomenon is we create a false model of Pakistan in the last 500 years that people have been dominated and fighting for resisting. The problem is foundation and pessimism, so bias and operate or knowledge of human beings to not have prior knowledge. Political immaturity say it is worth it unless I get paid off. Political action is not about you, it's about what you do for how many, and understand people who have done before and colonial struggles commit the error of forging their systems that are talking about human systems. Every human being has a difference. Incomplete. For Gordon, he can coin the phrase anti-blackness and constantly grows pessimists for misunderstanding his theory, and extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Telling Mr. Junior Dempsey there's more powerful for Alabama, the Civil Rights Act, the 14th Amendment, the segregation of the armed forces, demographic shifts, all requires as possible make them answer each of these arguments. They say they're structural adjustments, but things like decreasing life or increasing life expectancy disprove the claim that they're just structural adjustments. They structurally make society better for anti-black social death, ontological exclusion, the gratuitous violence. It's not our job to disprove them. The negative job needs to get into 100% risk, 100%. Any risk of things to get better disproves our argument. And for specific impacts, AC, in not only all anti-black violence, there are certain things that we should combat, which they conceded, i.e. like incarceration. Now, they say understanding incarceration is a false model is bad. We don't solely focus on incarceration, but rather look at the ways the law has fundamentally screwed over black people as well, and the permutation would shield the link away. And racism is a history, obviously contingent process. Afro-racism solidifies colonial ideology and a particular black experience. Kwani 17, race is not static ontology, race is ever shifting. Mr. Black is ontological, it's to repeat colonial thought. Race is colonialism speaking, they register on the form of colonialism. Will listen to a particular renditions of black experience. Being a rebellious example of the black body is not socially claim that blackness is evil means the black body is embodied without the logic. Reserve logic does not mean that ontology is not logic, but cut the card of logic to justify things like biological death as being intuitively bad. So insofar as they try to create a future value system or a world that is not predicated on anti-blackness, they need to be allowed to do so.
So you cut before Bacon's rebellion, and then you didn't read
No, I didn't cut before. I cut it in logic.
Does seem to reduce ontology to logic,
Yeah.
so right before the Bacon's rebellion? Is it that logic?
No. Wait, the one
Is it right before the last line?
is after Bivens rebellion. It's logic, denial of any kind of ontological integrity to the black and the slave doesn't seem to reduce ontology to logic.
Okay, yeah. Right, 3:30, starting now. Let me see.
That's what I'm saying. What's up? What's the percentage?
All right, it's sent. The order is case, overview on the K, K.
What'd you say first?
The AC, an overview on the K, and then the
Okay,
K.
all right.
Hello, everybody. Hi, today, people, my friends. Hello, Ali.
Oh, okay.
It's all we.
Love y'all.
White people. Thank you so much. Go somewhere and be quiet. Thank you.
Hey, the name of white Jesus.
Thank you.
Now the trench, boy.
Really good cut. I cut him early.
Yeah, because he always cute and cuddly. They don't like it. Hello, everybody. Good evening, everyone. Can you please shut up?
Oh, did you get it?
Yeah.
All right, everyone's good? The way through which you should frame this round is that since they've conceded the psychoanalysis warrants for why blackness is ontological, if I win a risk of a link, it means I have the only impact that matters in this round, and I will win a risk that the links also turn the case and mean the AC has no solvency. So you can vote on the fact that we turn the AC impact, or you can vote on presumption, because the app doesn't do anything. But now, the AC line bailing. First, they have not answered the underground argument sufficiently. The Lenninger 87 evidence is better than theirs. They just say that it is a universal ban, which means there will be no circumvention. But the argument is that judges have a vested interest in maintaining some amount of efficiency because they are worried about their caseloads and worried about their ability to do their job effectively, which means they will end up making secret deals with prosecutors that allow plea bargaining to continue to exist. It means you should vote negative on presumption because the 1AC does not do anything because plea bargaining continues to exist. It means that they can't solve their rule of law impacts or their legitimacy impacts because the plea bargaining will always be there to make the system illegitimate. If I win a risk that a judge has a vested interest in making the system remain legitimate, it means they don't resolve any of their efficiency mindset arguments and they can't weigh the case against the K because I won that the case doesn't do anything. Okay? Overview. Poverty, criminalization, and discrimination are all made possible by the ongoing system of slavery that continues to grind black flesh beyond the capacity of recognition. Slavery is with us still unfocused but centered on the middle passage and met with the ontological force that cannot be redressed but must be confronted to understand the immensity of gratuitous violence. The middle passage created the natal alienation of black identity and requires the genital autonomy of black body, setting up the disposability of the black body and continuous suffering. They have conceded the psychoanalysis portion of this debate. On the level of the real, symbolic, and the imaginary, the black is a phobogenic object that is a repository for psychic and affective violence. Whoever says prison says black, whoever says rape says black, whoever says AIDS says black. The libidinal economy creates a reward system for gratuitous violence and sutures inequality, the psychic terrain of civil society itself. This means social death is the only impact in this round should frame your ballot. Any risk of a link outweighs on cyclical violence because the benefits of the affirmative are on the veneers of the soul of civil society. They attempt to understand the structural impossibility of blackness or political grammar that crowds that ability to understand anti-black violence constitutive of the world itself. Structural adjustment reproduces one step forward and two steps back. Also another reason why the 1AC does not do anything because this is entrenched in the ALPS policies. Also, I'll read the card now. The reason to prefer psychoanalytic theory as a tiebreaker, even if they win their progress examples or win their Gordon evidence of reasons why blackness might not be ontological, I've won this is all looking at the material level. They've ignored completely the psychic terrain of this debate, i.e. the ways in which civil society perpetuates things like psychic violence against black body because it is constantly dehumanized, which means psychoanalysis is the tiebreaker here if you think that it is even on the ontology on the material level. Structural analysis is a better methodology than continuous analysis, better explanatory power. Anti-black violence cannot be evidenced through historical events because blackness as a structural position constituted outside humanity, creating objective non-constitutional relation to violence. We'll just intend. Discussion about the instruction of meditations on political economy, liberal economy, and discourse political comments is very mathematical possibility. The elements put on the claims about political and political economy and commentary on political economy without a segregation of economic doctrines. They disclose or set a lot of political premises that the economy or distributed range from desire and guide of political economy functions variously across scales and objective political economy linked to aggressions, destruction, and violence, consent, and the whole structure of the psychic and the lowest lives, decisive energies, anxieties, pleasures, happiness, repulsion, phobias, and crazy accepted logic of unconscious and mental and political economy through subject, whose structure of dispossession and rescue objects not to play the game but also to destroy it, and then exploitation and alienation. Also, I'll answer their progress arguments. Actually, I'll answer the framework argument for weighing the case. Sorry, they say that moves 6 minutes of AC offense, but it's just not move 6 minutes of AC offense. It's just incentivizes you to write better apps. You also get the last word in the speech, which means you can spin the debate, which checks back for any ability of us to move your offense. Also, for instance, to make your offense because you should write better apps that interact with case better instead of ones that do things like read rule of law advantage when rule of law is clearly racist. Also, I'll answer their progress arguments now. First, loving Virginia. Just because you could marry white people does not mean that progress happened. This does not prove any kind of material instance of progress. Starter v. Alabama. This should put black people on juries so that they could get struck. There was no material progress. Dexy v. Moore. Black people also do not have due process because of this. The AC literally agrees that plea bargaining violates due process, which proves Dexy false. Also, Powell v. Alabama. This is another due process argument, but we've run that due process is not accessible to the black body because things like democracy are always precluded from it. That's the Thompson 17 evidence on case. Also, the Civil Rights Act did not create any kind of this because we had poll taxes and we also had to move in which we foreclosed the ability of black people to vote. They have no examples of progress. We will give examples of against progress. Things like police brutality in the ways of systemic violence continues to happen today. All prove that their impacts are false. They cannot explain gratuitous violence. Also, the Gordon evidence first. They cannot read Gordon when important things of racism stem from systems and institutions to reinscribe certain ideologies, proves any attempts to work within the political system fail, even if there are random exceptions. Political ontology is still true and means that you should vote negative because Gordon agrees that there is no kind of progress. Also, this argument how Afro-pessimism is just dissatisfaction is wrong. We don't say things like rebellion or failures because they did nothing. We say that they did things, but they were always destroyed by civil society because of things like a backlash. Also takes out the Haiti argument because the argument is not that black people can't do anything. The argument is that civil society always backlashes to take away those kinds of progress. That's the structural adjustment argument that I read in the overview, which takes out Gordon. Also, I'll answer the prefer the AC impacts argument here. They've conceded several links to the K. First, The right 84 evidence is independent dissent that you should star on your flow. Even if I don't win the alternative, I will win that they are putting their faith in the wrong institutions. You should reference the people that I looked at in cross-sects. He said they've spoken out against Trump, but that has not done anything to materially check Trump. They put their faith in people that are literal psychopaths. That's what the right evidence talks about, because they disregard the black object as somebody that can access to humanity. Their priorities, things like genocide, because they set up this system in which we always make black people participate in things like bull fights, because we need to realize their faith in white institutions and also in white people to do good things when we won that they are psychopathic means that they cannot win this debate. They have not answered this argument, which takes it out. The second link that I'm going for is the Sexton link. They just say that they can talk about the law screwing over black people too, but they've conceded that their focus on violence attempts to make it coherent. When they focus on the prison as something that creates violence, that attempts to cohere and make it coherent. The argument that gratuitous violence proves that these forms of violence are not coherent. They happen without cause. It's not the prison system's fault. It is anti-blackness that is causing these structures to large. This is also proven because policing has been happening since the beginning because of things like slave patrols. Now, the Kalani evidence, they say that we should, ontology is true, but one, Bacon's rebellion means that you should vote neg right now. After the slaves allied with the white people, there was a massive backlash against them that allowed them not to do things like gather in public spaces because they were afraid of another rebellion, which means there was significant backlash to prove sexual adjustment. Also, this does not answer the psychoanalysis argument. Even if it is fluid, the argument is that civil society will always backlash. Also take the permutation argument because even if they say that because we literally cannot do both in a world where they affirm right institutions, they've had a rule of law advantage and attempted to win a permutation of this argument. This argument makes absolutely no sense in a world where they reaffirm white institutions. The alternative is a complete rejection of those institutions that attempts to see the larger game that they're playing. Only the alternative solves the entirety of the case because only we look at the entirety of the system of anti-blackness, which they cannot resolve for because they focus on it as contingent. Look, the round breaks down really easily. They've conceded that they attempt to make violence coherent. That is linked to the K, and they focus on the rule of law. That's Sexton. But I've won an independent dissent. They put their faith in psychopathic situations, psychopathic systems, and people. That's the right evidence.
Alright, how much time do I have?
116.
Okay, the order will be case, okay? What? Yeah. Yeah. Is everybody good?
Yeah.
Vote after to prevent Trump's drone strikes in Syria, which results in mass amounts of ground violence and death and nuclear war and escalation with Russia. So you have not conceded the you have not answered the specificities of our scenario and the way the rule of law is essential to checking Trump and military officials in the status quo. Their piece of case defense is not applicable to our 1AC. They say that they've just tweeted out, but our argument is that the reason they cannot do anything is because the legal system won't protect them from Trump and the status quo, which is why we've won a specific internal link as to why our scenario is key, which disproves empirically the claim that they say that all white anti-racists are bad. For example, when white people protested wars in Syria in the past, or other anti-war movements prove that generals dislike Trump's tactics and there's like gratuitous desire to kill or strike Trump's naughty. We have reasons to why intervening in this point is critical to stopping it, and they've not answered the specificity of our scenario. Now, the the K debate. I'm going for the permutation, but a little difference. The argument is Pascal's wager. The ballot should answer the question of offense. It should answer the question of offense. If there is a possibility that the world is not anti-black and that things can get better, then you should vote for the permutation. Because then we are all extinct and dead. You can see that biological death is an independent impact that outweighs insofar as we try to create a new society that isn't anti-black or change the status quo legal structures. That is fundamentally impossible if we are all dead. Now they say that we've conceded the psychoanalysis portion of this debate. This is just blatantly false. We have given multiple empirical examples which disproves psychoanalytic desire. For example, she has not answered our desegregation of the armed forces example where blacks were forced into the military onto the front lines, segregated from white troops to go and die. That was an example of a policy that helped black people. Things like decrease in incarceration rates over the past decade prove that white society doesn't have a libido desire to contain black. Things like Bacon Rebellion, where white individuals united with black sharecroppers and overthrew white supremacy, proves our argument, which is that inevitably white people do not have a libidinal desire to always kill black people. Any risk that there's a 1% chance that they don't means that you voted for them. It disproves their social ontology claims. Now the last argument they go for is that we try to confine violence to the prison system. That's obviously not true in the context of our 1AC. We criticize the way that Trump drug strikes people and launches abroad. We talk about racism within the law and society writ large. And it's not just a question of prisons, but we acknowledge it in the permutation shields the link to this argument because we can acknowledge that blackness is a larger structure, but also combat in specific instances of it within society. But briefly on case their circumvention argument, we answered. We gave Philadelphia as a counterexample, which outweighs because it was empirical analysis, which disproves their no progress narrative. Now the words alternative were not said once in this debate. If you don't understand how they overcome the structure of anti-blackness, what they do to reconcile our materiality, then you should vote affirmative insofar as we have an extinction impact, which outweighs the case and makes it impossible for anything to change or anything to get better. But insofar as we've won our examples, Bacon's Rebellion, things like desegregation of the armed forces, that things can change, things can get better, those disprove high theorizing, which ignore the materiality of Black Death.